All right, just while people file into the room, Christine, yesterday's question was all about pumpkins and whether it was too early for pumpkin season. I don't know if you and I have talked about that or not. I can't recall. Did we talk about that last week?
Yeah, we did. And I
We
said it's
did.
never too early for
Well,
pumpkin
that's the
season.
general consensus. So today we're changing the topic. It's not about pumpkins anymore. It is pumpkin season. So, what about animals? I may have asked you this one probably a year ago on a webinar, but what's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal, I was all excited when you said it was all about animals because I have a whole farm full of them. My favorite animal, I think when I was a kid, it was like a panda bear. But since we have so many farm animals, I mean, any baby animal, honestly, we had surprise chicks born last week, little late in the season, but we have baby chicks on the farm right now, and they're just so fluffy and cute. You just can't go wrong with a baby animal.
Yeah. And did you ever get rid of all your puppies?
We kept one because we're crazy people. So,
Because it needs more animals.
well, I mean, once you get to farm status, it's kind of, but yes, the rest of them are off in the world and they're going to be 1 year old in next month, actually.
Oh, how about that? All right. And then one other one. Now this is probably going to make some people angry, but hey, you know what? It's our event, so they can be angry. What's your favorite one to hunt? I was going to say favorite one to kill, but this
Hunt,
comes
yeah,
across
hunt is
terribly.
a more politically
Yes.
correct word.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a brand new baby hunter because I just started hunting a couple of years ago. So my only experience so far that has been positive, I'm not a very good turkey hunter, has been deer hunting. But my husband and I would love to do like an elk hunt, like a Midwest elk hunt. So if anybody has any elk hunt connections, throw them
Um,
my way.
I'll send you the picture of my son's buddy who last week was out in I think it was in Wyoming, did an elk hunt. It was massive, this thing
Oh
that he
yeah, they're unbelievable.
so
I
all
like some of
right.
these other animals, ponies and otters we have in the chat. I like it.
Yeah. I'm not even dogs don't count because they always rule. But outside of that, I'm a penguin guy.
Oh yes, that's a
Penguins are
good
awesome.
choice. Penguins are a good
So,
choice.
all
Red
right.
pandas, nice.
Yeah, I guess I should get us moving here. But this is day two, session two. And good afternoon. My name is Gary Dehart. Welcome to Insightful Accountants Future Forward Summit. Like I said, this is day two, session two. Truth about AI, how you can use AI in your practice, presented by Christine Gervais. I'll have her introduce herself in just a second after I cover housekeeping. And if you've been through multiple of these, you already know housekeeping, but sorry, I have to say it anyway. So CPE is being offered for this. You have to be here 50 minutes, 50 minutes. You must answer at least three of the polls. I think we have four. One of the polls, the last poll just says, do you want to receive the CPE certificate? If you do, please say yes. Then you won't have to harass us after this. That way we'll know you want one, assuming you qualify and you meet the other 2 points. So we will add a copy of the slide deck to the chat once Christine takes over. And you'll also receive an email follow-up that has a link to the slide deck as well as a link to our YouTube page, which is where the recording of this will be. And I do want to say thanks to our sponsor, Zero, and Christine will jump into that as well with her when she gets into the presentation. So Christine, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us. So just give me 1 minute. My specialty here is always getting the screen share going. Okay. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. There we go. Let's see if we can't get this actually started. I am going to keep the chat as well as the question and answer session up. Oh, here we go. Let's see if we can just get this closed. If you have any questions, like specific questions that I can answer for you as we're going, please feel free to pop those in the Q&A box. I will try to keep my eye on both the chat and the Q&A box, but you guys are a lively bunch. I can already see here in the chat. So I'm going to keep a closer eye on the Q&A box. If you have specific questions, just go ahead and pop them in right there. And as Gary mentioned, we just want to make sure that we say thank you to our sponsor for this session, Xero. If you have not registered for their panel discussion, there's a link right here. You can scan that QR code. Get signed up for this awesome tax season toolkit panel discussion. That's coming up Tuesday, October 17th. So they were nice to us. They waited until after the deadline so that we can all gather together and spend more time talking about taxes to get ready for this upcoming tax season. So we are going to talk about AI, specifically ChatGPT, how to actually use it in your practice today. If you missed the last session with Andrew, he did a phenomenal session on more advisory focus. I'm going to kind of be a little bit more technical in your day-to-day operations of your practice. But if you missed that session, make sure that you make it a point to catch the recording on that. Item of note, he also did an amazing job of incorporating some of the plugins and tools that you can get from the paid version of ChatGPT. I'm going to focus primarily on the free version today. So what can you and your team actually implement in your practice without any of the add-ons and the completely free as it is existing version of ChatGPT? So there are some differences there. Yes, awesome. In the chat box, Gary is going to post the registration to the Xero panel, and the slide deck will also be posted for you as well. So what we're going to kind of go over today, Nancy, thank you. You're such a sweetheart. What we're going to go over today, specifically, what is OpenAI? What is ChatGPT? I would consider myself to be what I lovingly refer to as a novice user of this particular tool. I don't think I've reached expert status yet, but I've been using it for probably about 6 months for various things within our own practice and kind of playing around with what it can and cannot offer in terms of efficiency for us. We'll talk about some pros and cons of the technology, as well as security considerations that I think are really important for you to be aware of and thinking about, specifically because they exist. There are some security concerns, and if you're considering implementing this tool as something that you're going to utilize in your practice and train your team to utilize in your practice, you want to know what you need to be aware of. Software and app integration that's available to you that is using this tool. And we'll also actually bring up a live ChatGPT screen. We can play around. I'll show you some examples of some of the things that I've done in it. But if you have specific things that you want to say, hey, Christine, how does this operate? What's the result if we run this? We can do that all in the live ChatGPT screen. So quick question I see in the Q&A, Nancy, looking for an AI tool that will read multiple web articles and consolidate them into one article. Okay, yep, that's a really great question. I'd like to use this as a jumping off point for blog posts and topics. Okay, so this is awesome. I am going to talk about how to use ChatGPT from a business writing perspective. I will tell you that right off the bat, that specifically what you're looking to do is going to require the paid version. I'll show you kind of how to do it the cheap way with the existing free version, but it has some limitations. So that's a really great question. Hang on to that one for just a couple of minutes, and I'll get into showing you, what those limits are and maybe what some of the workarounds are if you want to stay working in the free version for now. So specifically, what is OpenAI? Who is the maker of ChatGPT, in case you just did not know. OpenAI is actually a not-for-profit research laboratory. So this isn't just a name of something that we're coming up with. This is an actual organization, and the purpose of this not-for-profit is research and development specifically around artificial intelligence. So things to keep in mind, AI gets smarter the more information that you put into it. It's definitely not Google. It doesn't operate like Google. So we're not really using it to say, find me a recipe for peach pie. It probably could write you one, but it's not going to return existing recipes from the internet per se. AI is really meant to be very human conversational responses. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I think it'll be more clear when you see some examples, but you can actually refine the responses that it gives to you by having a conversation back and forth with it. So it's very different from like a Google type research than that type of structure where you're just asking for it to return an answer to a question. It's important to keep in mind, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the security points, but it's important to keep in mind that everyone and anyone has access to this, especially because there is the free version. So anybody is able to use it. That is great in a lot of ways because the more information it's fed, the smarter it is. It's concerning in some other ways from that security perspective, which, like I said, we'll get into a little bit more detail for. So I'm just going to take a breath for a quick second before we start diving into some more how we would actually utilize this. And Nancy, I'll answer your question. Let's go to our first polling question because I would love to hear from all of you. What are some of the things that you think that you might actually use AI for in your practice? So bookkeeping processes made easier, tax research and training, just overall efficiency, or none, we don't use it. We're not even sure how to use it. That'll give me a good gauge of where our audience is at. If you did not grab a copy of the slide deck, that is also in the chat box. So go ahead and grab that as well.
All right, we'll leave this open for about 5 or 6 more seconds. So if you need the CPE, please go ahead and participate. All right, 3, 2, and 1.
Awesome. Those results, I think that's what I expected to see, overall efficiency, which is great because that's what I'll focus on today, some different ways that you can use it. I absolutely will give you some tools to how to make your bookkeeping processes easier. The tax research and training, it can be used, but we'll leave that with some caveats until we get there. And so awesome. I'm really glad to see that these are kind of the results I was expecting to see. So Tammy, I see that you've raised your hand. If you have a question and you want to just go ahead and pop that into the chat box for me in the Q&A box, I would be happy to answer that question for you. Let's see. I'm going to let's see if we can hide this. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. So how to use this in reality. There's so much out there right now in the way of just different ways that you can use this. I think it's a little overwhelming in terms of how do you actually like real life, what are you going to do with this on a daily basis? Because you could take a webinar on how to use AI for just about anything at this point. But realistically, you're not going to spend 8 hours a day using it to generate Instagram posts for your practice. So let's talk about some things that you're actually doing on a daily basis. So, Nancy, what you mentioned is what I would kind of consider business writing support. How do we use it to generate more business writing support? And maybe some of your social media posts will fall in there. Might be emails, letters, job posts, anything that really requires a written component. Developing training templates, SOP guides. These are all things that you could use with your team, things that you could use with your client. So if you're looking for a really fast way to develop a training manual, a template for something specific, like a repeated process, a standard operating procedure, it can generate these and I'll show you live and you can modify them within the ChatGPT model as well. So some other like real life things to think about. What types of templates would you like to have in your practice? What type of training manuals or operating procedure guides would you like for your team to have or your clients to have? And probably the reason that you don't have them is just like the rest of us, you don't necessarily have enough time in the day. So a lot of that time consuming written process and procedural stuff, I think that those are the things that we tend to put on the back burner most often. But if you could have something generated in 10 seconds or less, that's hugely helpful. Bookkeeping cleanup and category support. So that one I think will be interesting to a lot of you. I'll show you some examples of that. Amy, great question. What about legal documents like operating agreements? Could it certainly draft something for you? Absolutely. My caveat with that is that would it actually be legally binding in the state that you or your client is operating in? Probably not. So I'll talk about that also when we get to the tax research and questions. You can see here on the slide, I say tax research and questions, sort of. We have to be a little bit careful when we get into specific legal and like law type nuanced documents and research because for one, it's limited in terms of how far back it can go of access of information. So AI right now does not scour the internet, if you will, further back than 2021. So it can return a lot of information to you on a specific topic, depending on how you ask the question. But well, here, let's see. Let's do this. Let's pull it up and see what it returns for us. So I'm just going to exit this for a second. I'm going to pull over our ChatGPT screen. You guys will have to kind of bear with me toggling back and forth between these screens. But just to give you an example, let's see, January 2022. Thank you, Elena, or Elena. I write a operating agreement for a partnership formed in, let's do Massachusetts, my friendly New England neighbors. Make this, here, one second. Let me see if I can fix the sharing of the screen here. Okay. Tell me if you guys can see that. Someone mentioned in the chat that the screen share was not coming up. Okay, great. Awesome. So I'm just typing, this is an actual ChatGPT screen. If you guys have not used it yet, this is kind of what it looks like, but write an operating agreement for a partnership formed in Massachusetts. Make this operating agreement specific to state law and assume, we'll say 3 partners. See what it comes up with. So it gives you a lot of these disclaimers when you're asking for something that might be very law specific. You'll often see these types of disclaimers. See how fast this is generating? So this disclaimer right at the top, we'll let it finish generating, but see, it says, I can provide you with a template for a partnership formed in Massachusetts. However, please note it's essential to consult with a legal professional. So it's going to give you, Jessica, whoa, I know, so fast, right? It's going to return something for you that you can absolutely use as a template, but it's going to tell you with the disclaimer, you probably need to consult with a Massachusetts attorney if you want it specific to actual state laws to make sure that this is really in compliance with all of the legality that this particular document would use. Cheryl, great question. So if you missed it at the beginning, I said that I'm only using this version as today's example. It's currently the free, most up-to-date, well, I shouldn't say that. It's currently the free version. I can switch to 4, but what we're not going to do is we're not going to do any of the advanced data analysis or any of the beta plugins or anything like that today. That would come to the paid version. So, this returned this whole document for you. So you can see operating agreement, introduction, it asks your partnership name, formation. So all of the things that you would expect to see in a normal business document, a normal operating agreement, but always with that disclaimer that it's not necessarily going to be legally binding in the state of Massachusetts. You need to consult with an attorney, but certainly a really great place to start if you wanted to give something like this to your clients and say, you know, this is where you would need to start in terms of giving information to a lawyer and maybe saving a little bit of time, but I would still make sure that you're always telling them to consult with an attorney. But really great potential template that you could use for sure. You'll see a similar disclaimer if you ask it any type of tax question as well. It'll say that, you know, hey, be careful. So, Nancy, your question on will read multiple articles. So something that this version of ChatGPT does not do is like I can't post a link in here. So like if I start a new chat, I would not be able to go out to a web browser and grab an article link and post it in here and tell it to read the article like to summarize multiple articles from multiple links. What you could do, let's go out to Google here and just say tax articles. Okay, so let's just find an example. We'll take something from Forbes. So I would not be able to just like take this hyperlink and paste it in here and say, summarize this article for me. It won't do that. What you could do, however, is you could take some of this content. So like if I take, let me see if it'll let me copy any of this article. I'm just going to take a small section, but I could say summarize this content into 150 words, for example. I'm not going to post enough of this in here, but then it'll read whatever you just plugged in and give you a summary of it. So this would obviously be a little bit more effective if I had copied more content from this site. If I use something a little bit longer and then I wanted a summary into like 150 words or 100 words or something like that. So that's a workaround that you could use. Again, you could certainly try something different. In the paid version has a lot more power and capability to do things that the free version doesn't. But you could do this for 3 different articles, and then after you posted all of them in there, you could say, take all of the above summaries and combine them into a 350 word article and see what it comes up with. And we can do more on business writing while we're here. That was the first topic that we were going to talk about today. So I can give you some more business writing examples, but see how quickly this generates this. So something that is worth noting in terms of the business writing perspective, and you can kind of see it right here, see how it says in conclusion at the bottom. It writes in a very formal manner. You have to remember that you're definitely working with a computer here. There's not a person typing on the back end of that. So it writes in a very, very formal manner. But one of the things that you can do in this human-like conversation, which is why I think it's so critical to understand how this is so different from Google, is you can say, rewrite the article in a less formal tone. Don't use words like in conclusion, and make it shorter to be 250 words. And it will rewrite the above that you just had in there with a slightly different tone. You can see like it replaces in conclusion with long story short. So I think if you're going to use this for things like articles, honestly, Nancy, I think that was a great question. And it's certainly something that I've tested out. My experience of it has been that I still need to kind of take the foundation of that writing and really modify it to sound like me, and to sound less like it's being generated by a computer. But with that being said, if you did want a really fast way to synthesize the information that you're taking from multiple sources and have it read those and essentially give you highlights and make that faster, great question. Are you able to write it in the tone of and then share your blog with it? In the paid version, I believe the answer is yes. So again, the whole point of this tool is that you are teaching it what you want it to return to you. So I believe the answer to that is yes, that you probably could feed it an example and say, I want you to write the article in the tone that matches this or the tone that matches that. But yeah, I would certainly play around with that. It definitely gives you a great foundation and makes it a lot faster for you to kind of get that summary of information to then turn around and produce a document. So other business writing things that I've used this for, let me see if I have any examples that I've saved on the side. You can see this panel on the side, by the way. You can save or not save these chats. So the delete button's right here if I don't want to keep this, but it will save your chats for you. So if there's things that you've done that you want to go back to, and access later on, you can just pop back into your chats over here. So let's see if we start a new one. Other business writing that you might do. I've used this one as an example before. If you need to, let's say, have a difficult conversation with someone, let's say you have to fire a client, write an email letting a client know that you will be terminating services. See what it comes up with. So it right away will generate for you, in my opinion, a very well worded, professionally written email explaining to your client all of the different aspects of, here's your service termination date, here's your deliverables, transition assistant, billing and payments. Goes right through all of the things that the factors that you would want to have discussed in that termination email. Maybe we think this is a little long, rewrite it and shorten it. So now it just makes it a little bit more concise. So when you're having to write, especially something that's a difficult conversation, this is another great tool that you can use to generate something that is just going to give you the bones. You can certainly modify from here, but gives you a nice professional foundation to modify from. Can you share a prior email with the paid version as well to give it a sample of how you write? I believe you can. So I think with the paid version, you can give it lots of examples. You could, in this one too, like I could have fed it an example of an email and said, use this email as a guide and write something similar, but with this topic. And you can just basically see what it generates. And you can see with me rewriting back to it and saying, okay, I like what you did there, but I want you to change this and this, it will respond with my requested changes. So let's do one more in terms of business writing. Write a job description for a senior accountant that will be preparing tax returns. Assume 3 years of experience needed. Let's just see what it comes up with. So it's going to give you a template right away, location, job type, experience level, company overview. So this is something that you could fill in. It's going to write the job description right for you, key responsibilities, qualifications, benefits, and then you could modify from here. So rewrite and assume no benefits offered. Probably not going to get any hits on this job posting, but just so that you guys can see. There you go. Jessica, signing up for ChatGPT right now. It's a really amazing tool. And like I said, I've primarily just played around with the free version. I really wanted to start to learn and understand how to utilize this without having to pay for it. The paid version is only $20 a month, and it's certainly a powerful tool. So I would not be the person telling you that it's not worth the 20 bucks. But if this is something that you're really looking to implement into your practice, I don't know though you necessarily want to have a paid version for every team member in your practice. So just to have the free version and understand what it can and can't do for you, especially, I remember like training some of the younger, staff members when they're coming in. Business writing isn't necessarily something that I think is heavily focused on when they're coming out of school. So this is certainly something that would be able to very quickly generate some great examples for some of your more green staff in terms of, hey, if you have to write, do some type of business writing, an email that you're not sure how to write, or something, if you're, writing a procedure or responding to a client, you could get some ideas in here of how to professionally go about that. Couple of questions. It's the best thing ever. Paid version is worth every penny. I agree. And then where do we go to get the paid version in OpenAI? Yep. So if you're in here, you can simply switch between, so like down here in my settings, you could come in here and go to my plan and I would be able to upgrade this. I actually do have the paid version, but like I said, I wanted to show you all what you're capable of with just the free version today. So if once you're signed up, you can just come down here and change your settings. If you go with the paid version and you want to add your beta and your plugins, it's right here in the settings as well. Okay, great. So let's pop back to our slide deck for a second. So that's just some examples in terms of business writing and support that can happen. Just let me know if you guys can see my slide back up. It seems like we're kind of getting stuck there with things toggling back and forth. Okay, great. So we didn't talk about training templates and SOP guides, but like let's just say that you wanted to write a procedure for how tax returns are collated throughout the office from data intake to how the return gets sent out to the client. You're literally just going to tell it what you want and then see what it comes up with and ask it to modify, or you can pull it out and manually modify. Can I integrate with other applications like Excel? So really great question, Amy. Sort of, kind of. The free version does not do this well at all. I'll show you some examples of tables and charts that the free version does. The paid version with the advanced data analysis will absolutely let you export to other modalities such as Excel. It can also generate some really, really beautiful reporting. So if you're really interested or you feel like you're going to use it a lot, I'll talk about bookkeeping cleanup in a second. If you're going to use it a lot for that, I think the paid version is probably definitely the way to go. How about Bing Chat? I understand it's based on ChatGPT 4.0. So a lot of chats, Jessica, I'm going to answer your question in just a minute. When we get to the KPI analysis, I'll show you a couple examples after we talk about bookkeeping cleanup. A lot of chat functions on websites now are actually AI. So I don't think a lot of people realize that, but if you've noticed that customer service in general has really shifted a lot more towards online chat for customer service, question and answers, I would say a good 9 times out of 10, that chat functionality is actually AI. There's not actually a person on the other end of that. So that's a feature that is really interesting to consider, whether or not your website is a good fit for clients coming on and being able to chat with AI, how you would monitor that. But a lot of chat functionality and chat helplines and things like that are powered by AI. Obviously, too, I have some software at the end that I will integrate with ChatGPT that I'll tell you about, but it's a great note taker too. So really amazing opportunity to have all of like your Zoom or your Teams meetings with your clients transcribed into notes like instantaneously as it's happening. So definitely things to think about. Can ChatGPT users exchange information so that a non-paid user could send a paid user their discovery chat? That would be, yeah, I believe so. So you can, let me see. Get back to my chat screen here. You can share these. So there is right here, you can share chat. So I believe you can you can at least share the non-paid versions back and forth. Could a paid version user share something back to a non-paid? Probably not, but you wouldn't need to because the paid version allows you to export to so many different pieces of software. So you could export to Excel or PDF documents, things like that. So you would be able to pull it out of the paid version to send to somebody else, like if you wanted to generate a report for a client, for example. And then how do you use it as a note taker? Mostly there is other softwares that are using ChatGPT on the back end, like OpenAI on the back end to be note-taking plans. So for example, I know that Teams now has one that's automatically connected to it. So if you use Teams, it will automatically ask you in each session now if you want to use that AI feature to transcribe the meeting. There's one, I think the one on my slide deck is grains, and there's a ton of them. So if you just Google like AI note taker for meetings, you can find a ton of them that are plugins for Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, and they basically will just run during your meeting and transcribe the whole thing. So super opportunity to take better notes if you're like me and I'm have like things on post-it notes after meetings that I have to try to remember to find. So let's talk a little bit more from the bookkeeping perspective and some of those KPI analyses things, because I don't want to run out of time for some of this. So this is an example of one where I asked it, I fed it some data, and I'm going to talk about security in just a minute, but I said, I'm going to give you a bunch of transactions. I want you to put them into table format, 4 columns, payee name, amount, date, suggested expense category based off of the description. And then I just dumped this data in here. So for example, I had a client, this one's kind of a weird one just because of where the data came from, but I had a client that had 12 months worth of bookkeeping she had to catch up on. She didn't have access to like an online download of any of her bank transactions to be able to put it into Excel or to upload into QuickBooks. And so we just had like basically PDF copies of the bank statements, which I was able to convert to Excel. And then it kind of returns like almost garbage, right? Like nothing in a pretty table, nothing in a nice, neat format. So you are able to basically data dump, and then this is the table that it created for me. So it said, here's my payee name. So it sorted all of these for me. Here's my amounts. Here's my date. Here's my suggested expense category. And I said, can you add a subtotal by payee? And it absolutely can. So that's kind of a simplistic data analysis that you can do. The advanced data analysis tools in the paid version are a lot more powerful than this, but it would organize some of this and create a spot for subtotals. Let's see if it will. Can you reorder the data in chronological order by date? Let's see what it does. I think most of these are on the same day, so that's probably not a great example, but it will do this for you. So if you're looking for organization, yes, this information can then be posted into Excel. So another example would be, let's see what I have. So this is something that I've played around with. One of the things that I think we've really struggled with in our practice is finding a really nice cash flow projection tool. There's a ton of them out there, and I think most of them do like just sort of an okay job, not really doing a lot of data analysis from the perspective that I would like it to. But I dumped in, you can just see like straight profit and loss data, no formatting, just here's the income and expenses. And I said, use this to build a 12-month cash flow projection. And so it's coming up with projected 12-month income and expenses, and then calculate average cost of goods sold, average monthly expenses, average monthly operating income, project these figures over the next 12 months, month 1, month 2, and then I asked it to put it into a table. So this is again, the paid version is a lot more extensive, but you have a very cheap, obviously free tool that will do some of this for you right here and start to create these tables. Yes, Nancy, absolutely. The right tool in QuickBooks. There's that, and then there's also, I've played around with digits. If you guys haven't demoed digits, I know that a few of us on here saw them at Scaling New Heights, and I have been demoing them ever since. So they have a nice product that overlays QuickBooks as well. And it also uses AI as the background feature to do a lot of this data analysis. So it'll pull in your QuickBooks information, Um, and it can create a lot of these same answers. Tell me what the average monthly expense is for this category. Tell me what average monthly cash flow is. A lot of that type of analysis can be done utilizing some of those tools. And it just looks a little bit prettier than this. So this is pretty rudimentary, but a great way you can see that it starts to sort and filter a lot of the data. There's also in here, let's see, we did the transaction table. Let's see. Transaction payee description. So this is another one that I've kind of played around with. I gave it kind of a challenging one, but if you have clients for bookkeeping specifically where you're like, I have no idea where to categorize this transaction, I don't know what it means. If you plug it in here, you can say, fix this data description, give me a suggestion as to where this should be categorized. And depending on what you're plugging in here, it is able to do that. I definitely gave it a challenging one for sure, but all those things that you're plugging in to ask my accountant and waiting for your clients to get back to you, you could try dumping them in here each month and seeing if AI is able to pull a suggestion for you or to clean up the description because maybe it's truncated from the bank and what have you. So huge opportunities in terms of what this can do. There's a P&L analysis that I did in here. So I actually, same thing, I dropped some P&L data in here. And then I asked it to actually write a report to the business owner discussing some of the KPIs. And so it generates something kind of basic, and then you can modify it from there. So I specifically asked it, explain what the top expenses are. So if you have clients that are asking some of these questions and you are utilizing this tool, you can get an answer almost instantaneously, especially if you're using one of the tools that do have an API connection with QuickBooks or Xero, where it's pulling in all of your client data real time. It has the ability to pull those things in, and you can type in instantaneously, like, what was my largest expense last month? And it will return an answer for you. This one's going to get confused because I'm using the data differently here, but a lot of those tools will return an answer for you almost instantaneously. Great question. How am I getting the P&L info into ChatGPT? So this is probably a great place to switch to security. You'll notice I'm literally just copying and pasting it essentially either from an Excel file or from a PDF, because that's why all of this is just here as like these sort of garbage looking lines. I'm just pasting it in here. Something to think about in terms of security. We'll kind of get back to our slide deck here. You can see super fast response, ability to kind of interact and customize, tons of different tools out there that will connect to it, like Digits, like the QBO integration. I'll show you my app slide in just a second of some other suggestions. Not always technically accurate, and security is definitely a concern. So you may or may not have noticed, but none of my clients' names were specifically listed in there. My client-specific bank accounts weren't listed in there. So from a data and privacy perspective, you have to remember that this is probably a more open tool than even Google. Like it's available for anyone, and the information stays in there. The whole point of the system is that it's continuing to get smarter as you're continuing to use it more and more. So you don't ever want to feed it anything that would be considered to be protected or private information from your client's perspective. You always want to make sure that if you're feeding it data for the sake of analysis, for the sake of getting it to rewrite something, that you're making sure that none of your client protected information is going in there. So I would be super careful to not be posting in client names, any type of bank or account information. That's stuff that you want to make sure is not going to be just accidentally thrown in there with any of the other data that you're adding to the system. In terms of also just training your staff with security, you want to make sure that they understand the security risks involved as well, that anything that they post into this is able to be publicly available, public knowledge is going to get fed into the system. Gary and I were having an interesting chat before we hopped on that it will certainly be interesting to see how this is utilized in the future now that this is a tool that so many of us are using. There is so much financial and technical data being fed into the system. How long will it be before there's some type of integration from the IRS end of things to look for matching financial statement information out in ChatGPT land? It's a free tool. It's available to anyone, and any information that you put out there is no longer private and protected. So you really have to keep that in mind and make sure that your team understands that they can't just post anything they want in here for ease of use or to make things faster for them. You probably want to consider writing some security guidelines into your specific security data plan, your specific office policies about how you can and cannot use this tool in terms of addressing security. So yes, Douglas, absolutely. Thank you for the reminder. So before we keep going, let's do another polling question. What is your biggest efficiency need? So we've seen some of the ways that you can do things faster with ChatGPT. In your specific practice, where are you hoping to gain the most efficiency with or without this tool?
All right, we'll leave this open for just a few more seconds and then we will close it out. All right.
This is really interesting. So I'm just curious, does nobody need more efficiency with tax prep and planning, or you just don't see the ability to utilize AI for tax prep and planning? All right. So it seems like the winner by a little bit is overall communication and workflow. I agree. So hopefully some of the business writing will certainly improve the efficiency at which that communication can happen. I think in terms of workflow, you can certainly use it to write some fast processes and procedures that you're able to give to your team. Yes, all of those options, Tabitha, I agree for sure. So you can see up in the background here, I have my app slide. This is not all inclusive. There's certainly more apps out there that are integrating with this, and there's more every single day. So we talked about Green, which is one example of a note-taking software. Digits has an API integration with QuickBooks, so you can pull in your clients' information. Airtable, Google Assistant, Zapier. So actually, that one's an interesting one. I'll show you just really quickly. I am admittedly not the most tech savvy person, but I can get Zapier to give me instructions. So here's an example of, I actually asked it to write me a Zap. So I said, can you create a Zap from better proposals to my invoicing software? And so I didn't tell it specifically what my invoicing software was. I just wanted to use this as an example, but if you're not sure how to create a Zap, but you know that their integration is possible, you can ask it for instructions. I think another one that I'm not great about is I'm not really great with VLOOKUPs and Excel tables. So write me instructions for how to create a VLOOKUP in Excel. It will literally give you the step-by-step instructions for how you can create this. So this is another great way that you can use this for efficiency in your workflow in your day-to-day, because this can really be utilized for almost anything. Obviously, depending on what you're asking it, but if you or any of your team members are struggling with a particular function and you're not sure how to set up, step-by-step instructions right here. So this is actually a really great thing. Like I just could create this as a template. So now I'm just going to save this in my training for my team that says, if you need VLOOKUP instructions, here's the template. If you need instructions for this, here's the template. If you need this, here's the template. So that's really great. Jeremy. There you go. So now, Jeremy, you don't even need to write the email. You can just copy and paste this right from ChatGPT and put it right in to a nice, beautiful instruction manual. And you're going to look like an Excel genius to your clients. But it generated that so fast. So now instead of you sitting there having to type that out in an email and step-by-step instructions, you can just copy and paste that right in. So it certainly creates, even with the free version, a lot of opportunity to just make things a lot faster. So security questions, we kind of talked about this, but I would highly, highly recommend that you write some firm policies, make sure that your team has read those firm policies, make sure that they've signed off on them, that they're trained on them. Don't upload client protected information. There is fine print when you go to the OpenAI website on security. There's also security companies out there that you can, of course, pay if you want them to manage your AI security threats or write, security manuals and things like that for you. So lots of considerations from that perspective. I would encourage you to put something in place that's a good fit for your firm, but certainly put something in place and make sure that everyone that is working within your organization understands what the concerns are and how we can utilize this tool and how we can't be utilizing this tool. So we are coming up on the 50-minute mark. Before we take any more questions, let's do our last polling question. How likely are you to leave here today and implement in some capacity OpenAI in your firm? I'm doing it right now. This is amazing. Nancy, thank you so much. I'm glad it was helpful. I think this is a really overwhelming tool. I definitely agree that I need more training. I still feel like I need more training. It is endlessly powerful, especially if you start looking at the paid version. And I think I could probably spend an entire week like going down an AI hole in terms of figuring out what it can and cannot do. But it's certainly something that is powerful enough that we should be figuring out at least a few key ways that we can integrate it into our daily operations to make things more efficient. So awesome. Paul, great point. Use ChatGPT 4.0 to write an AI policy template for WISP. Yep, 100%. So WISP was something that we all needed to be thinking about and putting into place before the beginning of this year, and great, great tool for that. I think that my business partner has certainly used it to write some SOP guides. We work with a lot of manufacturing clients, and so he's written like inventory and cost management SOP guides that he's then used as templates to customize for our clients. Any type of document like that to just, have it popped out in seconds for you is going to save you a huge amount of time. Even if you have to do some customization on the back end, to have a foundation created so quickly is really awesome. All right, Gary, we have a call for more webinars on AI.
Well, probably, let's just have AI do a webinar on AI, see what it says.
So the one thing that we didn't kind of touch on, although we didn't get a lot of questions on it, is using it for tax research. I always just sort of caution people on that because, again, you're going to get that disclaimer here. I'll pop it up for you guys one more time. I thought I had an example somewhere of a tax question, but let's just say, see, tax system, ERTC eligibility. So I asked it about the ERTC credit, which we all know is an interesting topic. It spit out a summary for me, but it's not really going to give me a tax specific answer. Let's see, I had one at one point on section 179, but we can ask it. Can I take bonus depreciation on my car? And here, where this is going to be your disclaimer right here. but it's going to give you some notes to help you decide what the answer is. So again, maybe a great tool for some of your greener staff that don't necessarily know the answer, and it can help point them in the right direction. But I would caution you on anything really, really specific to tax questions. Helpful to your clients though, since we're talking about writing things to clients, write a list of income and expense categories specific to Schedule C that I can send to my client to organize their business income and expenses for their tax return. I don't know about you guys, but I get this question a lot. Well, what can I write off? So, maybe using it to give your clients something like this would be, can you turn this into an Excel template? I definitely don't think that it can return complex tax research questions. Yep, absolutely. So this is going to kind of give you a rudimentary table. But if we asked it about, let's see, can I do a section 1031 exchange with my house? It's not going to directly answer that question. It's going to give you the tax disclaimer, and then it's going to give you some notes to consider. So not as helpful as we would maybe ideally like it to be from a tax perspective, but it can also do, where do I deduct SEP IRA contributions on my tax return? So not super specific, but it's going to give you something that you can kind of go off of. So that just kind of gives you some examples in terms of what some of those tax sort of answers are going to look like. So if there's any other questions, let me know. I will keep that Q&A box open for another couple minutes. My contact information, you can scan right here. Can ChatGPT users exchange information? So, okay, we answered that one. Great. Good. Perfect. And I think the last polling question is just whether or not you guys need your CPE credit.
We actually had one also for Xero that we didn't post that I'll throw up after this as well.
Okay, awesome, perfect. Yep, we want to say thank you again to Xero for sponsoring the session. Thank you all so much for being here. You guys were absolutely fantastic. I loved your interaction and your questions.
All right, if you need that certificate, go ahead and click yes. We'll be closing this out in a couple of seconds. 3, 2, and 1. We've got one more for you. And it's actually asking if you'd like to learn more about Xero's partner program. That doesn't really line up with the slide that we had, but apparently it's a pretty rich program.
It is actually. We take advantage of their partner program, and it's fantastic.
So we'll certainly get that information over to you, anybody who would like to hear that. But don't forget the slide was about their upcoming webinar, which was a wasn't it tax season prep session?
Yes. Yeah, and they're going to be doing it. I know there's at least 4 panelists, but one of them is also from Tally4, and that Xero Tally4 combination is great. Yeah, thank you all so much. Yep, I did. Yep, I used Tally4. I used Xero. Yep, so we're kind of a agnostic practice. We use both QuickBooks and Xero, and Tally4 is a great tax prep product if you're not familiar with it. So highly recommend that panel discussion if you're not currently utilizing those tools.
Yeah, and I just dropped the link to that webinar into the chat. And with that, I think we are all done. So Christine, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon. It's a lot of great feedback, a lot of back and forth. I don't know how you run the webinar and do the back and forth. I'd have to cut the chat off.
It's not my best strength, but we make it work.
I think it's a
I will just
generational thing.
I
So,
will pop my email address into the chat one more time in case you have any follow-up questions. Feel free to reach out to me.
great. Well, very good. Oh, and last thing, Murph, I mentioned this yesterday and I failed to mention it today, and that is on, I think it was Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday of this week. No, it was yesterday. So we kicked off basically his overview of QuickBooks Desktop 2024 is on the website now. We have a webinar on that next Wednesday as well. So hop on the site, check it out if you're a desktop user or if you have desktop clients, and then hopefully we'll see you on QB Talks next Wednesday. Again, thank you, Christine. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.